Hey everybody, Shibby here. We're going to be going and making an LCS 2024 Summer Split tier list. This is where I think they're going to end up at the end of the season. This is after playoffs. It's not end of regular season. This is who's going to go to Worlds, who's going to miss out, who's going to be 8th, who's going to be 7th, so on and so forth. I wanted to get this out before the season starts, which for me is tomorrow, June 15th is probably when you guys will be seeing this video. Hopefully we'll upload it tonight on Friday, but I want to get into this. I think there's a lot of big changes that have happened within the rosters. A lot of different players coming in, a lot of old players that haven't played in a while, a lot of exciting talent coming in, and especially with all the changes coming into the next year, into 2025, and how that, you know, could potentially shape up to be. Being successful this split probably matters a lot more than most teams realize and most fans realize. We'll be going from 8th to 1st, so we'll be going from bottom to top. And the first team that I want to put into here, and unfortunately the last place team, will be Immortals. And if you guys remember Immortals, they ended up finishing, I believe, 8th last split. I think they had sparks of brilliance, right? And we're going to be using the Shibby Esports transfers portal. This has probably all the up-to-date rosters if you want to know what's happening, who's moving where, if you want to keep up with what's happening in the other leagues and who is where they're at. This is probably the best site to use it. Immortals, one of the rosters that didn't make any changes coming into the summer split, mainly because there were a lot of rumors and, some people confirming that they were scrim demons, and that they were like very good in scrims. They just couldn't transfer it onto stage play. They have nerves. There's a bunch of issues happening with them, but they had sparks of brilliance. And that's kind of where a lot of people might be rating this team higher, right? Some people, I think, have them 6th. I've seen, I think, one tier list have them at 5th. For me, though, coming into the best of 3 format for the summer, which is one of the big changes that are coming in to the summer split, nothing really about this team kind of screams to me that they would be, dominant in a best of 3 format. Like the best of 3 format for some teams really helps them out, and for maybe 1 or 2 teams might not. But I think for Immortals, it's a net neutral change, right? It doesn't really do much. Yes, it gives them more games to play, but a lot of their issues and a lot of the problems that they seem to have, I don't think can just be remedied by best of 3. And a lot of the reasoning behind why this team is kind of better is not because of the roster changes they made, but because of Inero coming in from Golden Guardians last year. After, Golden Guardians left the scene, he was kind of jobless. He was working with DSG. He was working, as a freelance kind of coach, GM, whatever you want to call it, just kind of consulting around and doing stuff. But he's back hired on, and he's back onto Immortals. And I think a lot of people, are assuming that with Inero coming in, that is the change that Immortals needed. It was a personnel change rather than, potentially a roster change here. But I still think like this team, when you stack up role per role, or head to head against a lot of these guys, I don't actually think any of the Immortals players are, top half in their role, right? Top 4, let's say. You could argue that maybe Castle is a top 4 top laner, or, maybe if Mask improves, he could be like a really good mid laner. But, Armeo against the current jungle pool that we have right now, especially with the changes coming in, Spica, Tomio, so on and so forth. It's really rough for me to kind of think of him as he's going to flourish in this jungle, in this split. And Tactical Ole, probably the stronger part of their team as we're heading towards a more bot-centric meta with the AD carry changes, with the crit item changes. I feel like Tactical and Ole individually maybe are pretty good mechanically, or they're solid players, but I just don't think they can get it done against the rest of the bot lanes here. And it's going to be really rough if Immortals tries to play a bot-centric playstyle, because, Tactical Ole just seem like they can't get it done all the way, right? And I think that's why I have Immortals right now in that 8th place spot. If we're looking towards the 7th place team, unfortunately, Cloud Sidki, I gotta do it. I really like this team and I was really high on them. I kind of still am, but I think this team, Shopify Rebellion, is gonna end up 7th overall. I think right now there are a ton of good teams in the league, and I think the saving grace, and potentially this team could end up, I think in my book, I had them anywhere from 7th to 5th, potentially even 4th, but like I had them in the 7th to 5th range, simply because we didn't get to see B-Voy play a full split with Shopify Rebellion, right? He came in kind of a little late due to visa issues. You know, I ended up talking to Insanity during that time. You know, I had an interview with him and he mentioned that, like, yeah, we're doing one set of scrims with, you know, Wild Turtle, and then B-Voy comes in. He doesn't really get to play with us. The communication structure is messed up. This was very early on, and you saw how good this team was able to get the more they got to play. I also think the best of 3 format is really going to benefit Shopify Rebellion. If you remember, this team was one of the teams, Insanity, specifically in the mid lane, was bringing out some pretty crazy, wacky picks. That's a lot easier to do in a best of 3, and you don't have to worry about, you know, taking a pick and going, I could just lose my team the game with this, right? You've got 2 more games potentially to use, right? Or maybe you go up 1-0. You can use your second game as an experimentation game, or the first game, right? I think the possibilities and the avenues that Shopify Rebellion can go with how they like to draft, I think best of 3 really, really benefits them. And I'm very excited to see this Tomio Insanity duo. Boogie was good, don't get me wrong, but it never felt like the mid 2v2 for Shopify Rebellion was like super on point. Like, when I think of Shopify Rebellion, Boogie was kind of an afterthought, right? It was really Insanity and B-Voy running that roster. I still think it will be, but Tomio coming in, I think he's going to synergize a lot better with this team. And I think Fake God, unfortunately, just kind of is going to have to play more supportive, more utility kind of top laners, right? Because I think B-Voy and Zazel with a full, you know, kind of split to play together now. They've obviously been practicing in the downtime between the splits. I think this bot lane is going to be very good. I have a lot of trust in B-Voy and Zazel, and I think obviously B-Voy's first team All-Pro kind of shows as to why a lot of other people have this roster, maybe a little bit rated a little higher. But yeah, I think they can go anywhere from 7th to 5th, right? I have them 7th for my own reasons, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run, or if they can sneak into 5th or even 4th place, just because of the best of 3 meta. We're coming into an 80 carry meta again. Crit 80 carries are very good. B-Voy is very good, was a super strong point for them. And I think, you know, with Tomio coming in, it might take a little bit of time for them to mesh, but I think Tomio and Insanity can really kind of synergize well and maybe become a very big, feared 2v2 mid lane duo, mid jungle duo. For my 6th place team, I unfortunately have the 2023 Summer Champions, NRG, in 6th place here. Another team that, you know, didn't make any changes into the summer split. They did have a really big change when they brought back Hui, or they brought in Hui right after Ignar left. After that, you know, victorious summer split, Hui's had some more time on this roster, but realistically, for NRG, I think the really big question around this team is, you know, where does the magic come from, right? Because in 2023 summer, Palafox was playing out of his mind. Contracts was playing out of his mind. You could argue Dokla was playing really, really well. Like, they had a thing where they never showed any carry kind of top lane picks. And then Dokla really started picking up like the Jax and the Rumble and all this kind of stuff. And they kind of flipped the script on their team. The question is, can they do that again in this meta? As I said, we're going into a bot lane centric meta. And can Contracts really flex some of his jungle picks? Because you recall, he was one of the few people that picked up Ivern last year when it was really strong. And with all the different AP junglers coming in, right? Brand, Lilia, I would argue Morgana might have a spot. Can Contracts flex his champion pool and really pick up some of the more unique picks that potentially junglers like Umpty or Tomio or Armeo or Spica or whoever are kind of hesitant to pick up? That's where NRG can get a lot of their kind of wins, I think, with Contracts. And if Palafox can kind of play more, you know, assertive style mid laners, more something that he can really flex his mechanical muscle. Because I think last split, you know, there was a lot of Aurelion Sol, Talia, Azir, that kind of stuff. Not that there wasn't, you know, proactive mids or anything like that, but I just think it wasn't really the best meta for NRG. And I think FBI and Hui need a little bit more time to kind of sync up again, right? Because I don't think they were the most overwhelming bot lane last split, and there's definitely a different change, right, going from Ignar to Hui. And I think, unfortunately for NRG, I think they're going to be 6th, but you know, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they make another summer run, if they find some magic like they did last time, if Contracts can get on some of these, you know, more oddball picks, if Palafox can play something more aggressive or assertive in the mid lane, this NRG roster could make another run. Like, it's not out of the question, it's not out of the ballpark, but I'm kind of have to base it off what I saw last split and what I expect going into this split and what the meta is going to be. And if NRG stay the same team that they were last split, I don't think it's, you know, it's going to be rough for me to kind of see this as a championship winning team. For 5th place, I've got Dignitas, aka C9 Yellow, as a lot of people have called them or have been dubbing them because of all the changes they made. So Dignitas went through a ton of changes. They essentially swapped out 4 out of their 5 players. They swapped out top, jungle, mid, and the AD carry here with, a lot would argue, on paper upgrades, right? Licorice in place of Rich, Spica in place of XU, Jensen in place of Dove, and Sven instead of Tomo here. And we have Isles staying in that bot lane. And this is really like C9 blue, right? Like it's C9 light or C9 yellow. Licorice, Jensen, Sven, Isles all had stints on C9. Spica, the only one that didn't. You recall Spica took a little bit of time off after that kind of disastrous FlyQuest collapse that happened last year. A lot of people still think he's a very good jungler. You know, he hasn't had, you know, he's not a veteran, right? He's not like 10 years deep into his career. He's still very good, still mechanically very proficient. I think the circumstance in how he ended up in Dignitas is unfortunate for XU. I don't think, obviously, Spica doesn't want to be the villain. Spica wasn't intending for that. I don't think any kind of jungler in here kind of comes out looking good, right? XU just kind of gets screwed over because of how the esports works and how the team building works. But if you look at this team and you're thinking, why do I have them 5th? Why don't I have them 3rd or 2nd? Or some people have them winning the split completely. I think this team is going to struggle in the mid lane. I genuinely think that, like, Spica and Jensen, they're not gonna be able to do the things that Inspired and Jensen is able. Like, I think Inspired is a better jungler than Spica, right? That's like hands down. I think pound for pound, he's a better jungler. Jensen still struggles with carrying a lot of games. He has his own kind of champion pool. He doesn't really divert away from that. Yeah, he can give you that, you know, good Orianna game, or he can bust out a Hui, maybe he can do some stuff here, but Jensen's mid pool really struggles, and he's once again thrust onto a roster where he's not going to be the primary carry or even the secondary carry, right? This team runs similar to FlyQuest last year. It's going to run through top lane and it's going to run through the AD carry, right? Last split, sorry, it was Masu and Bwipo. This split, it's going to be Licorice and Sven, which you could argue are better carries for Dignitas, but Jensen still has that deficiency in my mind. And, you know, this might be one of his last splits. I don't know if he's going to retire, but I feel like having 2 splits in a row where you kind of might be one of the weaker members of your team. Like, you could argue FlyQuest, you know, Busio was a lot weaker, but he's a lot younger of a player. There's a lot more to grow for him. I think Jensen is kind of capped out in how he likes to play League, and he has his own style. And if you have a roster that can play around that can, you know, kind of shore up some of those weaknesses that Dignitas has done, then it's a pretty damn good roster. I wouldn't be surprised if this team makes it into 3rd place here, not 5th, and they kind of make it to that upper echelon of playoffs and maybe sneak in past that world spot. But I think this is, you know, replacing 4 out of 5 pieces. A lot of these guys, you know, Sven and Spica both haven't played competitive in a bit. Sven hasn't played AD carry in a while, right? He was playing support competitively. Spica's been out for a bit. Licorice as well took a split off. Like, a lot of these guys haven't played comp, and I'm not gonna say that they won't be able to, you know, kind of get back into it very easily, but I don't expect this team to kind of hit the ground running. They're definitely, in my mind, I think gonna hit some road bumps, some issues in the early parts of the split. I wouldn't be surprised after the first 2 weeks or first 3 weeks they're like 2-4 or maybe 3-3, right? I think this team, people expect this team to end up like 4-2 or 6-0 or whatever after the first couple weeks. I don't think so. I think this team is going to struggle a little bit, and it's going to be how they bounce back and how they play around Jensen, because I think there's a lot of good mid laners, right, in the LCS. At least the upper half of the mid lane pool is very, very good and can challenge Jensen and can really abuse the fact that this guy has a limited champion pool. I think Licorice coming back He should slot in fine, right? He's a carry-oriented player. He's more than willing to kind of play the tank style as well if needed. I just want to see Sven and his form, right? Because this guy, when he's on point, when he's on form, he looks like one of the best AD carries to ever touch the game, right? He's a mechanical monster. He grinds the game so much. I'm sure he's been grinding in the offseason. I just want to see how he stacks up in a competitive environment at the AD carry role, because he also kind of brings that shot caller aspect to it as well, that he was able to kind of hone in the support role when he was with Cloud9. I want to see if Dignitas are going to lean into that, or if they're going to give shot calling duties to someone else. This roster is exciting, but it has a chance to just kind of implode upon itself, which I don't think a lot of people are taking into account. My fourth place team, and a team that shocked me along with everybody last split, is going to be 100 Thieves. I think the best of 3 format, I was talking to David a little bit. I mentioned like, hey, you know, how are they going to look? I think the best of 1 format last split really benefited this team. They're another roster that didn't make any changes from spring to summer. They kept all their same pieces, rightfully so. I would have been very shocked if they replaced anybody, because of how good this young kind of rookie-ish roster comes into fruition. I think Sniper generally is trending upwards as a top laner. I'm going to see how he ends up in this best of 3 format. I think 100 Thieves really benefited from best of 1s last split and how volatile they were able to make the game. Sniper was getting tons of solo kills. He was playing really aggressive top laners. He was just going crazy, right? And I think with this team, with River, with Quid was able to scale up as a mid laner. I'll be interested to see how this team does in the best of 3 format. I think on one hand, it's very good for rookies, right? Or it's very good for newer players, because the pressure of losing it all in one game can become a lot, and it can kind of dissuade players from playing certain play styles or playing certain champions. But because you're in a best of 3 format, you're allowed to experiment a little bit more. You're allowed to get a little bit crazy, but that also gives other teams more time to adapt to your play style and make adjustments. And I think we kind of saw that when 100 Thieves hit the playoff point, when they went from best of 1s to the best of 5 stage, that they kind of faltered a little bit, right? And this is why they kind of ended up 4th. Granted, the teams they lost to obviously were very, very good, and they had some close series, but you could kind of see this team struggle as the series went on, and how many tricks does this team have. So I'm very interested to see how 100 Thieves has leveled up their game overall. I think, you know, this top side of Sniper, River, Quid, still very good, mechanically very proficient, a very scary team. But we are trending again towards that bot lane meta, and I want to see how Meech and Ayla play this out, if they can kind of become the primary carries for 100 Thieves, because it might be a shell shock to 100 Thieves if the meta becomes that, as we see it trending towards, and if Sniper and Quid have to play potentially more utility focused or more boring kind of stuff where they can't really flex the solo kills, they can't really use the gold leads they generate to win the game. For 3rd place, I have the 2024 Spring Champions Team Liquid here. I'm going to preface this with saying it's very difficult to become back-to-back champions for any team, right? LCS, it's still very difficult. You look at some of the teams that have become back-to-back champions, that have been able to win, you know, spring and summer, right? The old TSM rosters, like the really good TSM rosters, that Team Liquid roster that had, you know, like Double Lift, Xmithy, Jensen, Pobelter in the mid lane, Impact in the top, that roster. You also have the Cloud9 roster of yesteryear. Like, it is actually insanely difficult to win spring and summer back to back. Obviously, that's not my only reason why I don't think this team's gonna not end up 1st, and why I think they're gonna end up 3rd. I still think fundamentally they're going to be a very, very good team. I think they're going to have a little bit of MSI hangover as well, so they're not going to be able to start as strong as you'd expect, right? Because in theory, a team that doesn't make any changes from spring to summer should have a strong start, right? They should hit the ground running, because they don't have to worry about synergy, they don't have to do everything. But because of MSI, because of how difficult it is to win back-to-back, I think that's going to kind of weigh on them a little bit. It's much more difficult to stay at the top than to get to the top. And I think Team Liquid, even though they've got the pieces to win a championship, they've shown they can. I think the meta kind of fell into APA's lap a little bit, right? With the Talia, with the Aurelion Soul. He definitely expanded his champion pool. as the tournament went on, and he looked pretty damn good, I would say, for a North American mid laner and for a North American player at MSI. I think both Yon and APA really looked like some of the bright points for Team Liquid. But I want to see how Umpty is going to adapt to this jungle meta, where AP junglers are a lot more sought after. Things like the Brand, the Lilia that we talked about, potentially like the Talia, the Morgana, all the junglers that can abuse Faded Ashes is going to be interesting. Impact is still going to be Impact. I think the meta is gonna, it doesn't matter what the meta is really top lane. He's gonna just be that rock. He's gonna be super consistent. But Team Liquid as a 5-man unit, I think with the changes that are being made across the other 2 teams that are remaining and some of the other teams below them, I still think they're really gonna be good as the season progresses. But for them to end up first again and for them to win the championship, I think is going to be very difficult, especially because of how the game is kind of changing and where the champions are trending towards. I'm not saying that Yon and Core JJ can't be like a really good bot lane and can solo kill everybody and will thrive in this crit AD carry meta. But I think the other 2 teams that I have up and the other 2 AD carries have just shown that they can just hard carry games. Whereas Team Liquid, it really was APA, Impact, and Umpty in my mind that drove that spring championship. For second place, I have Cloud9. I know this team kind of faltered, right? And they ended up 3rd place overall, which was not what the expectation was for this team. Cloud9 made one really big change coming into the summer split. They have Thanatos or Thanatos, whatever you want to call him, replacing Fudge here. Cloud9 still have Blabber, still have Jojo Punes, they still have Berserker Vulcan. Like that core, wherever you want to call it, is still very good. I think it's insane to assume that this team is going to hit another downward spiral or is going to continue on the path they're on. A lot of questions come around their macro and who's going to be their shot caller. I still think that's going to be an issue for them. But having Thanatos here to replace Fudge, that just gives you on paper upgrade, right? You just have a better mechanical top laner. You just have somebody that is going to be able to flex a lot of those carry v carry matchups, right? Somebody that will give Sniper a run for his money, Bwippo a run for his money, Licorice a run for his money, right? All these top laners that you see here, at least on the upper half, are just carry orientated and really like to flex their muscles here. And so having Thanatos come in, young blood, very, very highly sought after mechanical player, insanely talented, right? The prospects around him, you have LS talking about him, you have a bunch of other scouts, having their opinions on this guy, saying he's like, one of the next best great top laners. Cloud9 to pick him up and put them on their roster to just bolster the mechanical ceiling of this team is insane. And they might just win games out of sheer mechanical prowess. But because we head into a best of 3 format, it also kind of allows Cloud9 to work out some of the kinks of their, let's say, macro orientated losses, right? Where they couldn't really close in on some of their leads. They couldn't really figure out what to do across the map and how to transfer these leads. I talked to Cloud9, I talked to Jojo Pune, kind of, I think at the beginning of that little spiral or kind of when it was happening. And he kind of mentioned that it felt like every player was kind of playing for themselves and they weren't, trying to play connected, right? They weren't playing for mid, then using that mid power to go to bot lane, then using that bot power to, help topside out to get objectives, so on and so forth. It kind of felt like every player was playing for themselves and then they would kind of link up together afterwards. And it wasn't as smooth and it wasn't, a game where everybody was trying to play for each other. If that changes, I don't know. Hopefully their new coach, hopefully some of the structure that they have brought in with Reaper coming back allows them to bring some of that synergistic play for each other, sacrifice for each other. You're going to play this. Reaper's very heavy-handed in draft. Like he's going to tell you, you're going to play this champion. You're going to play for the team. If you don't, I'll find a replacement for you. Or you're going to do this. You're going to do that. He's a lot more strict, I think, of a coach and has a lot more structured ideas of how he wants to play the game or how he wants his team to play out the game. And I think that's what Cloud9 needs the most. It was a personnel change, in my opinion. I don't necessarily think that Fudge maybe needed to be replaced, but the fact that you can get Thanatos here, you can get a higher mechanical ceiling top laner is just going to allow Reaper to impart his vision on the game with a lot more smoothness. And going to allow him to give him more options as we come into the LCS. Now, with all these teams obviously ranked, we've got the final team, and I think it's going to be a hot take, maybe a little bit for some people. I have FlyQuest actually finishing first and winning the LCS Summer Championship here. You recall, they ended up second in a very close series against Team Liquid. They battled out twice in the playoffs. FlyQuest, another team that only made one roster change, and it was replacing Jensen with Quad from their NACL roster. And I was someone last split who was very high hopes for Masu when he came from the NACL. I'm somebody that watches Tier 2 League, pretty solidly. I have a pretty good grasp on the top teams and who's like LCS ready and who I think is very, very good. Quad was one of the players in my mind who does what you're supposed to do as an import, backing up a player like Jensen, right? You hit super high elo in solo queue. You win NACL. You dominate mid lane as an NACL player, right? You don't just win as a passenger, you win as a driver of the bus, right? That FlyQuest Challengers roster ran through those solo lanes, right? Ran through Surdy, ran through Quad, and Quad is just an insane player. And I think the normal doubts that you would have of an NACL player or a Tier 2 player coming into the Tier 1 league doesn't apply to Quad, right? It won't apply to him throughout the season. I think he's going to hit the ground running. He's going to do insane things. He's going to like solo kill people. He's going to bring a lot of that mid lane pressure that FlyQuest needed and that they were lacking when they had Jensen in. Jensen's one of my favorite players, and I know it sounds like when I was talking about Dignitas and I'm talking about FlyQuest now that, Jensen's like a horrible player or anything like that. I just think Jensen has a specific play style, and I think it only worked for so long for FlyQuest until they kind of got exposed. I also think that the way that FlyQuest want to play the game, especially with Masu Busio, and we're heading towards that bottom lane centric meta, and then I wanted to talk about for C9 as well, Berserker and Vulcan gonna be one of those premier bot lanes that when it's crit 80 carries, when bottom lane is going to be the meta, they're going to have to contend with Cloud9 here, and Berserker Vulcan, one of the best bot lanes easily in LCS. I think FlyQuest, on the side of Masu and Busio can do. I think Masu, or that bot lane can really put on the carry pants, and he's had a split with FlyQuest. He's been developing very nicely. He hit the ground running. I think FlyQuest has a good system to get their rookie players or their Tier 2 to Tier 1 promotions in an area where they are comfortable to play. Inspired is still the best jungler, in my opinion. Like, hands down, he's still one of the best junglers in the LCS, if not the best jungler in the LCS. And I still think he's going to be able to carry that forward. The big question for me is going to be surrounding Bwipo and how he matches up against some of these top laners. Licorice and Thanatos specifically, obviously into River as well, although Bwipo was able to show that he can handle River and he can take him down. Meta is going to be different. Top lane's looking a little weirder with things like Skarner becoming meta. Other champions kind of slotting back in. Things like Mordekaiser, one of his picks that he really liked, might creep into the meta, especially with the changes that happened to him where you can't QSS the ultimate. There's a lot of weird picks that Bwipo can bring out. I think he had a little obsession with the Urgot when it came to MSI. And I think if you're going to base this team off their MSI performance, then sure, yeah, they might be a worse team. Getting eliminated by PSG is not the greatest look. But I think coming into the LCS, I genuinely think FlyQuest is the best team. And I think they will walk away with the trophy simply because of how much I believe Quad is an upgrade over Jensen and how this team wants to play the game, how Inspired wants to play the game. Inspired Quad could end up being an enormously scary mid 2v2 jungle duo and just run LCS here. And I think Masu slots in well to this crit orientated 80 carry meta that we are trending towards. But that's going to do it for my tier list here. Again, this is where I think everybody's going to end up at the end of the season. Who's going to be first, who's going to be second, who's going to be third, who's going to Worlds, who's not going to Worlds, who's going to be watching at home. This is my tier list. If you have any questions about it, if you got comments of what you think I thought about the players, the meta, so on and so forth, obviously leave a comment down below. Share your thoughts. I love reading through everything. I read through every single comment. I might not reply to them, but I definitely read all of them, and I like the ones that I like, and I'll reply to some of the ones that I think are very interesting. I do a pretty good job of doing that. This video should release later today. I'll get this out. It is June 14th, 2024. I definitely want to get this out before the first set of games in one day, right? In the summer split. And I'm super excited because a lot of the rosters bolstered their pieces up. There's a lot of cool players coming in that I mentioned. And I think, again, because of the changes that are coming into 2025, because of how the potential structure of the North and South conferences is going to be, I think performing well and becoming summer champions is going to be very important coming into 2025 as a roster, as an organization, to see where the dominoes are going to fall, where the players are going to want to go here. And yeah, I think FlyQuest is just going to win it all. Hey everybody, thanks for watching the video. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the content. If you did, leave a like, comment, do all that jazz. I genuinely try to respond to every single comment I see because it's always interesting to see the other opinions of people that care about League of Legends esports as much as I do. Obviously, the best way to support me is to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on my latest uploads. If you want to see more of me and my content, I stream on Twitch 5 days a week. The link will be in the description box below. If you are into short form content, I'm also on TikTok. We talk about LPL, LCK, LEC, all the stuff over there. We talk about roster moves. So if your jam is short form content, head over to TikTok, hit the follow button there. I'm also on Twitter. So all of that stuff will be in the description box below. But other than that, thanks for watching the video and I hope to see you soon.